Welcome to this episode of the Million Dollar Mastermind. I'm Larry Weidel, and before we get started, if you want to know exactly how to win again and again, go to weidelonwinning.com/webinar now to watch something I've put together for you. Now let's get going into this episode of Million Dollar Mastermind. I'm here talking with Jeff Robinson, and we're talking about running a retail business in a ski town. So you're running a seasonal business. You got 5 months out of the year where, prime season, and then you got to shift to something else, or you got to rent it out to somebody else. And you can't sit back. You've got to stay out there on the attack, dealing, because from one year to the next, you never know what's going to come your way with weather and crowds. And, Jeff's had the pandemic to deal with while he's been changing locations here the last 2 years. But Jeff, excited to be talking with you. And Jeff's the owner of the Ski Locker Ajax in Aspen, and that's where I keep my skis, right there near the mountain. And so, Jeff, talk about, do you have, people who are looking at running a business there, they're always looking for systems and, easy answers or simple answers. And of course, you're better if you can simplify things, but do you go through and follow every week, every day, every month, just kind of follow? Do you have a system that you follow, or is it a matter of dealing with what, having a general idea of where you want to go and then dealing with what comes up to make it happen? How would you describe having a system?
Well, I kind of have my own general idea of how I want my day to go, or my system, or how I want the month to go. I'm very hands-on. I'm the manager, general manager. I do my payroll, I do the scheduling, I do the purchasing, I do it all for my store. Although I've got some help, I do most of it myself. So I just, I'm big on to-do lists. I take a lot of notes to keep track of what I need to get done. I love having a notepad of stuff I got to do, and I love checking things off. For me, that really works well. So my system on a daily basis is kind of the same thing. I kind of get up, figure out what I got going on that day, and then try to tackle it as much as I can. And then if some things pop up throughout the day, dealing with those things, depending on what they are. So.
And how you deal with the problems, or how do you deal with things? It's easier if you jump on these things and don't let them fester. You say you're hands on. That gives you a tremendous advantage in terms of always knowing the pulse of what's happening. If you're absentee, things can happen. You come back and they're like, whoa, I just heard of a business. Well, I won't get into that, but it's like overnight dramatic things can happen. People can do some weird stuff. And if you're gone for a week or two, you come back and, you can be shocked with how things have gotten out of control. But there's a lot to keeping your hand on the pulse of what's going on. And the advantage of a small business is you could do so much of it yourself, I guess.
Yeah. My hands-on, I'm always there. I like to take a little time to go skiing when I can. And my employees are good, but I am very seldom gone for very long, out of town for much more than a week. So I'm there I'm usually the first guy there, last one to leave. Get a little break to go ski during the season, which is nice for a couple hours. That's all I need on Aspen Mountain. You get plenty of vertical feet in a couple hours and get a pretty good workout. So yeah, it's And if I, I'm a pretty even keeled guy. So if I do have a problem, something arises, I mean, I usually handle it head on, figure it out quickly and be done with it.
I've noticed that about you, uh, is that temperament has a lot to do with the stability of the store and the business. It's like you can't be someone who's making mountains out of molehills and really run a happy business, can you?
No, absolutely. Absolutely right.
And when you go, I mean, how do you say you start the day, you have a pretty good idea of how you want the day to go. Are you thinking in terms of revenue? Are you thinking in terms of uh, any kind of volumes? Do you have numbers you try and hit during the month?
Yeah, more monthly numbers for sure. Sometimes you can have a phenomenal day when you don't think it's going to be a very busy day in a ski town like this. You don't ever know who's going to walk in your door and spend, some money, quite a bit of money, or you can have a day where you think you're going to be busy and, for some reason people weren't out skiing or weren't out buying skis or weren't doing anything. So, my idea of just my goal is just be there, take care of my locker members, take care of my customers, make sure my employees are doing the same, and good things will happen. And if you give good service, and good knowledge and good information of what people are looking for, you're going to sell skis, you're going to sell boots, and you just take care of people, and a lot of that stuff falls into place.
Well, you got to have a confidence in what are the main things you want to control. So things like sales will fall into place. I mean, you've got to have a feel for that and know what the most important things are. And like you can't control how many people sign up for lockers for the year, things like that, how your membership grows. Like before you went over there and took over the first location, they expanded, got a whole new batch of lockers, and pretty soon they were all sold, and you had a waiting list, but you didn't know in a given day who's going to walk in and want to give you a check for the rest of the year or for the year, right?
Right.
But you do know if you have the right kind of atmosphere, the right location, the right vibe with your employees, and the mountain's got plenty of traffic.
Yeah.
That good things are going to happen. And so at some point you got to focus on what you can control, not what you can't control. And what can you do with your what do you do to maintain things going and keep your staff motivated? Hey, listen, there's a lot of information online, but there aren't a lot of people who've actually done something. In my case, I've actually built a successful business that's accrued over $5 billion in assets under management and has done well even during trying times. Now, if you want to know exactly how I've done this, go to whitelmwinning.com/webinar now. I've compressed a decade of learning into 5 short weeks just for those of you who want to give yourself an incredible advantage and are tired of waiting and watching others move up.
Oh, I just try to keep their attitudes good. I like to work with my employees and give them time to go do things. So, if they want to go ski or if they need a day off or something, whatever it may be, to kind of keep their attitudes good, I try to work with them on that. That way, when the customer walks into the door, they're in a good mood. Therefore, they take care of the customer. What else do I do? I try to compensate them to where they're happy. And just
how do you look at that? Is that on you pay the position or you pay the person?
Kind of the person, and depending on their ability and their experience, is how I pay them. In the ski business, you get a lot of people that are part-time. that are maybe only here for a year. Some are full-time, some have been doing it and they've lived in Aspen for 25 years. So you get all kinds of different abilities and experience with being in a ski town in a tourist type atmosphere.
What do you know as you move through the town and as you see people, you have a, pretty high end clientele and you see a lot of successful people. What are traits that you notice that you learn from some of your clients, the present and then in the past? People are successful. What things do you pick up about them?
All kinds of different things. I am very fortunate that I am in this town, and my locker members and my customers are a lot of very successful, a lot of great people. And I really enjoy it. And it doesn't matter, like, we're all friends. We're all having a good time. We all love to ski. We love Aspen. So it doesn't matter how successful they are. We're all just friends and having a great time and enjoying this industry and skiing and being in Aspen. So I learn a lot from a lot of successful people and kind of listen and they give me, and I ask for feedback from a lot of my locker members and customers because they are successful and got a lot of good advice for me. So I'm very fortunate in that sense.
And what are some of the things that you have learned in particular?
Just to make sure you kind of do what you say. So if you've got a locker member and they want their skis tuned or they need something done, just make sure you do it. Don't forget. That's one thing that drives me crazy. It's a pet peeve. If I'm not handling that situation, an employee says he's going to do something and he doesn't do it, and then that locker member, that customer comes back in, that is probably my biggest pet peeve. And then I've got to deal with it and figure out and make sure this person's not upset with us in the shop, and you lose business over something because somebody didn't follow through.
Yeah, it's a lot of it has to do with just doing what you said you were gonna do and not dropping the ball because you're really not paying attention. And when I noticed that with your team, they're very serious about what their job is. And that makes it easier for you to stay focused on keeping you're not putting out fires all the time. You can kind of focus on the relationships and the friendships and the conversation. And rather than if you've got people that are creating problems for you every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I believe in giving your employees the tools to do it, that have the ability to do it right the first time. And like you said, do it right and do what you say you're going to do and follow through.
How did you figure out the funding for all of these things? Your new spot, your new location, your new lockers, and it's really a high-end place. And had to be very expensive. It had to cost a lot of money. And so how do you figure out those things? You had a lot of time to plan, didn't you?
I did. I mean, from the design part to figuring out where we're going to go, that I was kind of fortunate that we had that year off to really design what I wanted to do and go into the pop-up. But as far as funding, I was fortunate that my next door neighbor that wanted my spaces was willing to pay enough money. And I said, I'll move, but you're going to make it worth my while. And it's not going to be cheap for me to move, and it's going to be a lot of headache. I got a very successful little shop here that does really well, and everything's dialed in. I know exactly what to do, what to order, who my employees are. And so fortunately, my neighbor made it worth my while. So a lot of the funding for the new store, that's where that came from. So I basically just parlayed that into the new location and all the design, build, new locker room, the new equipment and everything. So I was fortunate that a lot of that funding, that's where it came from.
And was that a gut check to sign the 10-year lease?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, before I even ever signed this lease, when I started looking at it with my broker, I didn't honestly, I didn't really want to do it because it was such a big number until I really sat down and penciled it and designed it and figured out, what the locker revenue could be and certain things, and that we could probably do triple or quadruple our retail business out of there. But I could be honest with you, I lost sleep over that lease and the new rent factor number. On a nightly basis for weeks before, and I hadn't even signed the lease. I was just thinking about it. And I'd wake up at night going, that's a big number. And it made me nervous, and scared me a little bit, but I went for it anyway, and I'm glad I did. And there again, just put my nose to the grindstone and said, I can make this work, and we can be better than we were before. It'll be a cooler location, a better locker room, more lockers, so I can accommodate more locker members, have a fantastic patio, and so many more amenities to this new shop than the old one, and just such better visibility and all those things. So
In other words, you had to sell yourself before you could sell anybody else.
yeah, I did. I could have just taken the money and walked away and left Aspen probably because I wasn't going to stay in the ski business. But I'll tell you what kept me in it is all my locker members, great people, enjoy them, being around them, all the people that come in my store. I wasn't ready to walk away from the business, my friends in the business, the town of Aspen, and the ski business and skiing, and just being in that business. I wasn't prepared to leave it. So that was kind of what motivated me to move into a bigger store and really, take some risks and go for it, and almost start over. I mean, I feel like this new store is, even though we got a lot of business, a lot of locker members, it was almost like starting over again. And it has been, but it's been a fun process, and I'm grateful I stayed in it, and still having a great time. And I've got so many great friendships and people that I know because of my shop, and people all over the country, and successful, wonderful people that I deal with all the time.
Yeah, Jeff, and you couldn't have got them any other way. And that's the priceless reward for doing what you've done. If you enjoyed what you've heard and are dead serious about finding out for yourself exactly how this works in the real world, I've taken the most valuable business lessons I've learned over 40 years and put them into something for you to watch. Go to whiteelemwinning.com/webinar now in order to move up as fast as possible. I'm Larry Weidel, and I run the $1 Million Mastermind. Go, go, go.